Okay. Thank you all for coming today to the Pale Spark Simple Reports training. My name is Elizabeth Davis. I'm the Support and Project Management Specialist, and today I'll be doing the training. Our agenda is pretty simple. We're going to go over the support website. A lot of documentation for reports is slowly working its way to our support page, so I want to make sure that you're familiar with it and where to find all of this. We'll do a walkthrough of setting up simple reports and kind of a tour and demo. And then we'll talk about use cases and tips because the Simple Reporter is a great tool, but um, the name is very indicative of the level of reports you're going to get. So just want to manage everyone's expectations that it's not going to be the end all be all, but it will be a great first step. So just so you're aware, we did switch to a new support page this summer. So if you have any bookmarks that are in your browsers, you may want to take a few minutes to update that and make sure that they're pointing to support.sparkpa.org. You can email us also at support@sparkpa.org. You can also call us if you so desire. And you can also join the user group listserv for reports. Tracy, I can send you those slides if you'd like. Okay. The listserv is a great place to ask others if they have templates or general reports questions. So these are just some of the ways that you can get help with reports. So let me switch over to our support page. So when you visit our support page, you'll get this nice, fun portal. You can do searches for anything that you're looking for, and it'll search full text and give you some examples of possible articles that could help you out. Or you can scroll down to any of the topics on our that we've created documentation for. And here is all of our stuff for simple reports. We have creating a simple report, and it'll give you kind of step-by-step directions, getting started, building your criteria, all that fun stuff. And then we also have the tips, which we'll be going over at the end. All right. So this is what this is our test server, and this is where you'll be able to access the simple reports until we upgrade on November 10th. I'll share the link in the chat, and you folks can save this to try out later so that if you want to replicate any of these or see if you can replicate any of your current templates in the simple reports to test it out. Simple reports will be under administration, right under here. We'll see if we can add it to the administration tab. There is a new feature that we can add links now here. We were going to wait until after we updated to kind of start playing with that. But for now, on the test server, you can find it here or under administration. So let's dive in. So the simple report screen will look like this now. There won't be that weird boxes of folders. You just have my reports and you have my outputs. There's no folders, there's no like nesting or anything like that. You're good to go right when you open it. So you'll see that I have a few examples, but to start a new report, which many of you will have to do when we upgrade, you'll just click new and you'll pick your report type. You have a few to choose from. So you'll have circulation, collections, weeding, patrons, and billing and payment transaction summaries. So rather than having to pick a source and all that fun stuff, they kind of boiled it down to the basics. So we'll start with a circulation report, just for example, and we'll want to name it. As you can see, I get fun with the titles of mine. So let's say, again, it could be anything you want. You can hit save. The nice thing about simple reports is that you can save it at any time. So if you get disrupted and you have to come back to it, it's very easy to do that. So you have 4 tabs now to work through. You have your display fields, you have your output order, your filters, and your output options. You don't have to do them in this order, but it makes sense to do it and kind of keeps you on track on where you need to do what you need to do. You also then have under your display fields, you have common fields, so ones that are very popular for the report type that you selected. So the common fields will change depending on the report type. You have item fields, all of the fields that are available to you, patron, call number and title fields, libraries, and then you have a list of all of the fields available to you. I will say with the caveat that patron fields, with the simple reporter, you will now be limited to only the patrons in your working org unit. So if you run reports, say for your district, you want to make sure that you have those org units in your staff account. And if you need that, you can let us know. We can help you update that. So to get started with our circulation report, let's just do a daily circulation type. So we'll take a look at the common fields. They're pretty helpful, actually. I kind of like the new options they give you. You have your circ ID, which obviously you want to count because that's the count of your circ. And I want to know the specific day that the circulation happened. So just like you would in the other reporter, you'll want to change it to the day or the month or the year. You can get pretty specific if you'd like. I like to do date. You can also change the name at any time. So instead of circulation start date / time, you could just say circ date. Instead of circ ID, you could say circ count. You can have the library checkout name. You can have the due dates of those items that were checked out on that day. You could see if you were looking for circulation versus renewal items, just to kind of get an idea how many things were renewed on a day versus checked out. You can even have the renewal type if you've turned on auto renewal. Some things that I noticed that I thought would be helpful for some libraries is if they're doing a little collection development, you can look at certain Dewey blocks or Dewey 100 blocks. So say you wanted to see if your nonfiction things were circulating, how they were doing on a certain day or time frame. So that's been fun to see. Additional item fields you can add if you want to get very granular, if you want to have shelving locations or the barcode. Call number components you can also add. You can have TCNs, ISBNs, titles, all of that fun stuff. You can also have, if your library is in a resource sharing agreement, you can see where the owning library is versus the checkout library, all of that fun stuff. But for now, we're just going to look at a few things here. Actually, I'm going to remove this one. So removing things is a lot easier. You just hit your minuses. You can move things around by using the directional arrows, which I really like. I think that's a great addition. So you also then have your output order. So as you saw, I could change the output of the column so that the first column is going to be the circ date, then it's going to be the next column is the date, the name of the library, and then so forth. But you can also have the sort order set here. You can have, you know, the larger numbers of the circulation at the bottom. You could have, you can decide the checkout name if you want that alphabetical. And I want that one to be the most important thing. So I'm going to move it up. So once I have my sort order selected, you can move on to your filters. So as we're going through, you saw I picked a couple things for my display. It's going to give me a summary of those. So that's nice. It kind of gives you a reminder of what you picked, which you couldn't see unless you flip back and forth on the other one. So this is a nice addition. And it's going to have suggested filters. So making sure that you're, again, based on the report type and the fields you selected, it's going to recommend some things. So obviously I need my checkout library. And I want to look at a specific date, so I definitely need that. Again, don't forget to select your transform. And in terms of filtering, I think that's all I really need to know, because once I run it, I'll be able to, I can see how it worked. I know I did Dewey blocks, so let's do that just to see how that works. I did hundreds on the first one, so let's do hundreds on the filters. So let's, we'll pick Scranton because I'm most familiar with their circ data. So I'm going to say what circulated out at the Albright. And since this is on the test server, I'm going to want to look at something significantly older. The data hasn't been refreshed for a couple months. So let's look at a date in, let's say 2019, just to be safe. So let's say what we did on a Sunday in 2019. And let's see, we want to do the hundreds. Trying to think of a very popular Dewey hundreds. Actually, let's remove it just to make it easier. We won't do that. We'll still have it in the display, but we won't have it in the filters. And then you have your outputs. These are all the same as before. You can have your Excel. Oh, actually, I think Excel is newer. CSV output, HTML output. You can have a bar chart or a line chart. You can set it up to reoccur if you want, just like you were able to in the past. But just remember that you'll have to structure your filter a little bit different. And then you can schedule it and you can send it to emails. So I'm going to save it and then save and schedule a report. So it's going to take me back to my reports tab. And here's my report that I built today. It's going to have the date you created it, the day you last edited it, the last run day, and the next run day. And then it'll let you know if it reoccurs. You can add or remove a few of these. These are your options under the little gear. So the thing that it doesn't do is in your outputs, it's not going to say what's pending. So you're going to want to make sure that you kind of just have to refresh until it runs. Now, I had a feeling that this might happen. So it says there's an error running my report. So let me go back to my reports. I'm going to edit it, which is nice because I can just edit it on the fly. I don't have to clone it and then reset it up. I can just edit the template right here. So I'm going to take out these two things just to, okay, I want to make sure we have a date, we have a count, we have a library, our filters, there's a library, and we have a date. So let's try this one again.
I was gonna say, if you want a Dewey 645, I believe is cookbooks.
Oh, to keep with our cooking food theme. So again, it says here's our last run date and now your next run date. Again, kind of indicating that it's running. So I go to my outputs and it's still running because it hasn't told me there's an error yet. So while we wait, I want to show you here's a daily circulation report that I kind of set up from before. And you can look at the HTML and it'll give me a breakdown of the checkout library, how much checkouts, how many renewals, where did it happen, and then the profile group. So you can do a little granular things if you want. You can get it pretty robust, I think, in terms of circulation reports, which is really nice. So let me hit refresh. And now my report has finished, and I can tell because I have the HTML version and the CSV. And so on in 2019, on this day, Albright circed 301 items. So that is cool. So I did want to mention that you can do quite a few different options. Oh, there's a question. Will report templates that are made in Simple Reports show in the full reports page? No. So they're two different tools. So if you build something in Simple Reports, it lives exclusively there. And then if you use, I don't think there's been a decided term, but I've been calling it the complex reporter. There was a joke yesterday that somebody called it the Avril Lavigne reporter because it's so complicated. If we have any Avril Lavigne fans in the audience. But yes, so if it's, yeah, it definitely isn't simple. No. So they live in silos, so they don't really interact. They pull from the data from the same tables, but you can't get one in the other. So I hope that helps. Does that answer your question, Vince? Okay.
I was just gonna drop in and say I like this and don't like this. Like I like it that it isn't dependent on the structure of the old reporter, which I think is sometimes kind of problematic. But not being able to say like build a report in the complicated reporter and push it to the simple reporter or something like that. Like there are things that would be nice.
That would be cool.
If
Yeah,
they were more integrated, and we'll talk more at the end about some of the things that this does and doesn't do, and some of the ideas that we have for that.
yeah. So I'm just going to go through another example that I built just so you can kind of get an idea for weeding. Weeding and collections in my head are kind of almost the same, so you might want to test out the two options. And when I say weeding and circulation or collections, I mean from this report types option. There may just be some things in weeding that aren't available in collections, so you just want to play with it a little bit to see which one you may favor more than the other. So I did a Dewey weeding one because when I worked in Scranton, we had a librarian who really liked to look at what Dewey blocks or 100 blocks, like what activity was happening in them. So we had run quite a few reports. So this one would have been really nice to be able to run for her. So since it's already built, I'm just gonna, you can clone it if you want. So say this is something that you want to run for each, department has their own, or you want to set it up to reoccur for each department. You can clone it very easily. So here, and it'll just say clone. You can again name it whatever you want. And then it'll open up to the editor, but it'll pre-populate with all of the options that you had selected in the other one, which is really nice. So you can see I picked owning library, the call number label, the title, the author, the barcode, locations. And the nice thing about the weeding ones in the common fields are these circulation totals, which I think is really cool. You have your total circulation, so circulation over the entire lifetime of the item, or since you migrated. Circulation year to date, circulation last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and 5 years ago. So I think that's really cool. You can see the trend of a topic or the trend of a title. I think that would be really cool to look at for like an author if you wanted to see like, hey, is James Patterson as popular as he was 5 years ago? Something like that. So again, you can have all of those. You can have additional fields if you wanted. The Avril Lavigne reporter. No, but we were in a meeting yesterday at the hackathon, so they were talking about they're going to be changing how the reports the complex reporter is going to look. They're updating it to the newer layouts, and they did say that they were taking some ideas from the simple reporter and putting them in there. So I think that might be a trend as for popularity. I can see that potentially happening in the future. So I'm glad that you guys all like that. So again, you can have your output order as complicated as you want. And then your filters. So I was looking at the 100. So Katie, you said 600 is cooking. So let's look at the 600s again at the Albright. I'm going to schedule and run. So that's going to take a minute probably. So I can look at my outputs and I can refresh it. While we wait, here's an example what it will look like. You have your, I did it on the 100s, which I think is very foolish of me because it didn't come in, it didn't occur to me that I would get all of the government docs. So this one's kind of messy. And I think I'm going to crash it. So let me close that.
You also picked one of the few libraries in Spark that is a GovDocs repository.
Yes. So, oh no, I crashed it. Hold on. Let me stop sharing my screen for a minute. So this is why if you know that the report is going to be really long, don't try and browse it in the tabular view. Just download it. It makes your life easier, and you don't
Excel is your
embarrass
friend.
yourself. Yes, you don't embarrass yourself when you're supposed to be.
I do like the view though, just because I want to see if there's data.
Yeah, did it work?
Yeah. But yeah, don't keep scrolling because it won't load at all if you don't tell it to load.
Okay, I got it. I got it. Can we simply simplify the report to JE? You can do it by call number. So yeah, we can play with it by call number. It's been, you can do it in the complex reporter. It does get a little dicey with call numbers. So sometimes I like to report out the entire shelf list rather than by call number, but you can if you want. We can definitely test that out.
Yeah, and for those of you who have shelving locations that make those distinctions as well, like a juvenile shelving location, I would say don't run call number. If you're running something like a Dewey, 10 block, then obviously you have to run call number reports. But if you can do it by shelving location, it's just going to be cleaner.
Yeah, and you might. What I know we saw at Lackawanna was over the years, the naming convention for the call numbers had changed over time. So what used to be J, JE, and then it became Juve, Juve-E, and then it became Juve-Easy. So you might miss things if you only do it in certain call numbers. But if your library has been very consistent, yeah, we can definitely do that. So it's still running our report. So while we wait, are there any other questions? And feel free to unmute if that's easier.
do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you can't do in the simple reporter? Or is that
Yeah.
later on your agenda?
It's later in my agenda, but we can
Okay.
definitely.
I'm
we can talk
not trying to
about-
throw you off.
Nope, that's okay. So while we wait for my example to run, which I should have run before, my apologies. So use cases, and just general tips. It's designed for just those few topics: circulation, weeding, collections, patrons, and billing and transaction summaries. I will say with the transaction summaries, if you have to limit it out to where the bill was paid, we are still gonna wanna use the existing template in the complex reporter. This template, or the template that it uses for the billing and transaction summaries, does not take into effect the one that most libraries use for that billing reports. You can schedule them to reoccur just like you used to in the other one. You have them emailed to yourself or others as well. Things that you won't see is you can't do anything with acquisitions. You can't do anything where you need to see open circulation. So, or, specific payment by billing type. If you know you have to have specific sources, it's probably safer to run it in the complex reporter. And you can also not run reports that use statistical categories or nullability. So those are more complex reports. And so we'll still have to run those in the other one. So Vince is asking to have the report emailed to multiple addresses. Do you have to put a comma? Yep, you can put a comma, you can put a space, you can put the semicolon. It's kind of forgiving, so you can have quite a few email addresses listed. So if this is something that you're mailing often to a bunch of people, you can definitely do that. Something else that you'll want to know is that you saw that there were no folders, so you want to make sure that you delete ones that you don't need anymore. There's no way to organize them. I will say though that you do have a filter option for both of these, in the outputs and in reports. So you can use the filter. This will be your new friend. So you don't have to know the whole name or you can do parts. So say you wanted to do, well, I know it contains the word demo. So you can hit the apply filter and it will only filter out the ones that have the word demo in it. It is case sensitive, so make sure you're aware of that. So if you are looking for the lowercase demo, you're not going to get anything. So try and be fairly consistent with your naming conventions. Can clear the filter. You can also do date. Could be on a date or near a date, greater than a date. And if you know when your report ran on a date, I tip my hat to you because that's pretty amazing. Oh, our report finished. So let's hop back to that. Again, you can see, I probably should have filtered this by shelving location, but this is just a quick example. So you can kind of see when things last searched and how they're doing. So in case that crashes, we're going to close that. Some tips. When you're building, and this applies to the general reporter as well, when you're building your structuring report, it's always helpful to write it out as a full sentence. So that way you can kind of identify what you're looking for and where you need to start. So you're looking for a list of patrons who are not expired, who are in this patron group, who maybe check something out in this year. So knowing that you're starting with a list of patrons, that's the biggest component. So you're going to want to start with that source. whether it be in the simple or the complex reporter. So it'll also help you keep track of what filters you need to have. You're going to need to pick the home library because you need certain patrons at a certain library. You're going to want to make sure you add the expiration date filter. You're going to want to have the checkout filter added. So writing it out really helps you kind of see it on paper and kind of select your options. Naming conventions, try and stick with one. I'm horrible at it, so learn from my mistakes. Try and be consistent. So for example, if you're going to build a monthly recurring report, or maybe start all of your recurring reports with the word recurring or monthly or daily or something like that, just so that you know that these things are going to be reoccurring and that you don't want to delete them. And like I said, the filters are your friends in both the display and in the structure of your report. Sometimes it's easier to have everything dump out, have more in the output than in the filtering. And then sometimes it's easier to get really granular. I will say that sometimes starting with a lot in the output, and then once you kind of see how things result, you can add more filters to make it more narrow in focus. Sometimes people add too many filters at the beginning and they're not getting anything and they get frustrated. So I like to say, put everything that you possibly think you'll need in the outputs, and then you can eventually use some of your outputs as filters, if that makes sense. So those are just some tips. I would love if, as you start using it, if you want to share any of those with me. If you have other tips that you find helpful, that you think others will also benefit from, we can definitely put it on our support page that has info about tips and suggestions on running reports. Everyone catalogs slightly differently. I know we have a shared catalog, but circulation modifiers you use, the call number structures that you use, and the shelving locations you use are all very different. So sometimes sharing those ideas is very helpful for others. So if you want to try out the simple reporter, you can. You can log on to the test server. It's test.sparkpa/eg staff. Let me put that in the chat again in case you missed it. You can log in with your username and password that you use for the regular server. If you have trouble logging in, just let us know. If you're a newer staff member, your account might not be in there, so we might just need to add you. And also, we do have a survey that I will add to the chat in just a second. But, oh, thank you, Katie. Are there any questions regarding simple reports?